Hello, hello. We are live for Destined For More online show. Welcome. Happy to see you this week for bringing you our special guest expert. Um, if you're here today, just know that we come live every week and just with a message to help midlife women in life and business. If you're new to me, my name is Wesley Reece and welcome. I'm a success coach and healer for midlife female entrepreneurs. Women typically come to me when they know they have a strategy that works, but they're not getting the results that they want. And so they've typically done the traditional mindset work and it's just taken a long time. And they're ready for better results because better is possible. I am on mission to help women transform their lives, empowering them to let go of the stories that are holding them back, causing them to play small so that they can step into their greatness, unapologetically shining their light in this world. So, welcome this week. If you are joining us live, tell us in the comments. If you're joining us on replay, please hit hashtag replay. I'm excited to bring you Susan Barber as our guest expert today. She and I have had the pleasure of meeting through mutual connections in a women's mastermind group, and we instantly connected. To tell you a little bit about her, she is a former Fortune 500 director turned executive coach, and she helps business leaders who want to play a bigger game, increase their visibility, and finally shine their light on their leadership strengths so that they can elevate their position in the workplace. She's also the author and podcast host of The Visibility Factor. So today we're chatting about the power of raising your visibility. And I'm excited for this conversation to bring you today. So welcome, Sue. Welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation too. We have a lot in common between us and what we do. So, as you mentioned brilliantly in the introduction, I come from a Fortune 500 background. I learned a lot about leadership and helping, many women in that organization, shine and find ways to mentor them and guide them. And as I left the corporate world, I decided that I wanted to start my own business to be able to do more of that. And the visibility factor is kind of one piece of that. That was my own story in many ways where I wasn't being visible. I was sitting in the back of the room and not talking and not adding value. And so that pivotal moment of me discovering that I wasn't being visible is what led to me leaving at some point. It was also what led me to write the book and now do the podcast. So the more people I can help understand that they can be visible in their own authentic way is really the mission that I have.
That's so great. I'm just excited that you're sharing this message in a really big way because I really feel like it's one that needs to be discussed because a lot of the times, whether you are an employee or you have your own business, the visibility piece will really determine how far you go. And you had mentioned being the director in a Fortune 500 company, and I wanted to ask, what exactly were you experiencing as you started to realize that this was something that you needed to work on?
Well, before that moment, I thought I was the top talent. I thought I was, up for the next promotion. And then that conversation changed everything. And in that moment, I think I wondered, did I have a career anymore? Could I fix this challenge or not? I had seen a lot of other people be visible, but more like bragging and, speaking in every meeting for a long, long time, and everyone has their eyes rolling and wondering if they're ever going to stop talking. And I just saw those examples, and I didn't want to be that person. So I think that's partially what held me back for a long time. I also struggled with a lot of imposter syndrome, thinking that other people at higher levels knew more than I did, or my peers knew more than I did, and they belong at the big table with all of them. And I think it was that moment of having those conversations with my mentor that really helped me see, like, you have got to do something different. You've got to sit at the table. You've got to start speaking up and sharing your ideas. You were hired for a reason. So share what you know. And I think the biggest discovery for me was that me not showing up for myself was one thing, but I was also not showing up in the best way to help my team. And so the visibility that I can bring to my team wasn't happening. And so that to me was a little crushing, like, oh my gosh, sir, you've got to change this now. And so that's really where I started, was helping them get more visibility. And then I learned all of these different ways to do it for myself in my own authentic way. And that's what I really wanted to bring to more people. So it's now what I talk to clients about and help them do the same.
Nice. I can so resonate with what you said as far as and when I was reading, I have to share my book. When I was reading some of the stuff that you had written, it really resonated with me because I used to think of visibility and putting yourself out there as that bragging, egotistical, self-promoting, and I just didn't want to be that way. I didn't want to be that person. And it's really interesting you point that out in your book as well, just about that story that we tell ourselves until we start to really uncover what it means to be visible, um, and how that can really hold you back, just that story itself, um, and being able to change that. And then um, here's my next question is, being an introvert, um, can you speak to being visible and being an introvert, and the dynamics of that?
Yeah, I am definitely an introvert. So I share a story in the book about, networking events are like an introvert's worst nightmare. And because there's so many people there and it's overwhelming, and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to talk to people. And so I share a story in the book of a kind of funny experience of doing that, of kind of hiding in the bathroom for a while until I could get my courage up to go in there. But I think once I realized going in there meant that I didn't have to talk to 150 or 200 people. It just meant that I had to find a few people. And so once I started to realize that this is about you connecting with one person, which I was totally comfortable with. I can talk to one person all the time. I do that every day. So if I just start looking at myself and to realize that I can have a conversation with this person, and then maybe we meet the next person and the next person, and maybe have 3 to 5 conversations, and then you're going to sit down for whatever the program is. So I think once I realized that and I was able to do it, it just made me calmer. The other thing that might help people as introverts, somebody shared this idea with me, and I thought it was brilliant, is that you're the host of the event. Because if you're the host of the event, you go up to people and say, how are you doing? Are you having a good time? Like, you think about it more like it's your party, for example, and you want to make sure everybody's okay. And I think most introverts kind of fall into that role a little bit of being behind the scenes sometimes. And thinking about yourself as a host might help you come out of that in a different way. And it was definitely helpful for me. So introverts can do this, but they may need to do it differently. And if I speak about it from a manager's point of view, managers have to understand that they may have an introvert on their team, that they may have someone who doesn't comfortably speak up at every meeting. And how can they help them be a person who can do that in a bigger way? And that means creating safety for them. It means allowing them to have a voice. It means allowing them to speak up at different times, but then behind the scenes, reassuring them, you're doing great. I love what you shared today. That's exactly what I want to see more of. So once they start taking that action, it builds their confidence, and then they will do it more and more.
Nice. I appreciate how you shared how um, a manager can apply this to their team to help them gain visibility too. Can you talk a little bit about the process you refer to in the book, for that person that's wanting to become more visible?
Sure. Yeah, I built this process because I wanted everyone to be able to create their own unique plan for themselves. So it's called RISE, which kind of has a little bit of a metaphorical meaning to it as well as an acronym. But from a metaphor standpoint, it's helping you rise above, helping you stand out, helping you find a way to do that for yourself. The acronym RISE stands for Reflection, Ideate, Select, and Evaluate. So the reflection part, I walk through it in the book. So you can, if you read the book, you can see what a client went through when she answered these questions in the reflection part, how she thought about it. The ideate part is helping people come together with ideas. I have hundreds of ideas in there. If you don't have an idea for yourself, there is something in the book that you can find that you can leverage based on your strengths. So if you like to speak, if you like to write, if you like to have conversations or volunteer, I tried to break it up into categories so that people could find something that works for them. And then they select their ideas in the next section, and then ideals or ideas that they have that they really want to do. I wouldn't select all of them. Like, let's pick two or three, focus on those two or three, and then move forward on those. And then evaluate is about how is the feedback coming back? Are people liking what you're doing? Are they saying good things about you? How do you feel about what you're doing? Do you see a change in what you're doing? And then are you ready to pick some additional ideas, or do you need to do something different with the ones that you have? So it's a really quick process. I feel like it's very simple to follow. And I'm trying to give as much guidance as I can. I have videos on my website that people can also watch a little bit about each of the sections so they can hear me talk about it. I've taught classes on it to help people learn how to do it for themselves. And it's really, it's almost like an aha moment for everybody to realize that it's so much easier than they thought. They've made it so big in their heads that it's hard and I can't do it. And what I want to show them is very simple. It's just little steps every day to take action.
Yeah, I love that. And you also refer to in your book, because you give great ideas, suggestions, you refer to creating your own visibility blueprint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to think about it that way. I want people to think about this is a journey. It's not a one-time thing. So you can create a blueprint for your time and what you're doing in this role. But when you take the next role or you move to the next level, that requires a different level of visibility. So I want it to be a guide that they continue to refer back to and say, I'm ready for the next level of visibility now. I've mastered that one at that level, and now it's time to go to the next one. And I try to also share ideas because we've moved into maybe more of a remote or hybrid world.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing when we went through that situation in 2020 because people said, well, I don't know how to get visibility. I'm used to walking down the hall or meeting somebody at the coffee station or going to someone's office. Now I can't do it. Yes, you can do it. You just have to do it differently and be more creative about it. So, a quick example is if you're in a meeting with people that you haven't met or had a one on one with, use that as a way to say, okay, that's the next person I should meet with. Pick that person out, meet with them or have a conversation with them after the meeting and say, I'd love to have lunch with you if you can, or have a Zoom meeting with you, whatever it is. But use that meeting as, hey, I realized when I was in that meeting with you that we've never had a conversation. So it's a really good way to have the quick, just talking to each other and then using that to springboard into a conversation as a one-on-one that they get to know you and you get to know them.
Absolutely. I love that simple example. Because like you said, it doesn't have to be complicated. Let me ask you, what do you what do you feel really gets in the way of someone when they're struggling with visibility?
Most of the time, it's their own thoughts. It's their own limiting beliefs, experiences that they may have had in the past where something didn't go well and they don't want to fail. A lot of times, it's some of the things like I mentioned earlier, like self doubt. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. They may be trying to be a perfectionist. And so perfectionists want everything, to obviously be just the way they want it to be. And that can cause them to procrastinate because it will never be perfect. Perfection is an illusion and you're never going to get there. So I try to have people think about imperfection. What is one imperfect action? Doesn't have to be perfect that you can try. And most people see that as a big, almost like a permission slip, I guess. It's relieving all that pressure that they've been carrying around. I call it the crown that I used to wear, which I used to think perfection was a really good thing. And I was proud of being a perfectionist. It's so not helpful. It doesn't help you move forward, it keeps you stuck. So, letting go of those tendencies and realizing that nobody is ever going to be perfect. Never. And you just do the best that you can. And your best is probably better than a lot of people who don't really take the time and effort.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so when we're talking about visibility, um, if someone, you talked about simple steps to get forward, to move forward, um, when they're looking at it from, say, the workplace perspective, um, you know, why do you feel that that's important for people to to do, no matter what their career stage is?
Mhm. I think because, if they operate in any way like I did, which is I grew up at a time where work ethic is important, working hard is important. And, most people would think, oh, if I work really hard, someone's going to recognize me and they're going to promote me, which is, ultimately what most people want to do in an organization is get to the next level. It's more money, it's maybe more bonus, maybe stock at some point. And so there's that recognition that I have to work really hard to do that. That is true up to a point. Working really hard, probably at the lower levels in an organization, is what people are going to notice about you. But the sooner you can start to create visibility for yourself, the better off you're going to be. Because as you reach to like a manager, director, VP, C suite level, the level of visibility has got to be there in a way that people can see what you're doing. Because now you're not just managing yourself, you're managing a team.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to talk about what your team is doing and all of those kinds of things. And so what I'm trying to encourage is to start younger, not older. Don't wait till I, figured this out. Start as soon as you can. And it doesn't have to be challenging. I think the thing that I realized when I was observing people who were good at it is that they actually were just sharing information.
Mm-hmm.
I perceived it as bragging in some situations, but I think they were actually just sharing information. So, for example, someone in the room says, hey, I'm having this really big problem on this project and I can't figure it out and I don't know what to do. Somebody sitting next to them can just say, you know what, my team's been working on something similar. Maybe we can share ideas and I can help you. Right. But that's creating a little bit of visibility for them and their team in the room.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that, I thought, well, that's not hard. I can do that. Why am I making this such a big deal? So it's about sharing information, but in a way that's authentic
Mm-hmm.
and genuine and helpful. And, sometimes it's just learning how to talk about things in a different way than maybe you're doing today, or maybe you're not talking about it at all. And so the assumption is that your manager knows what you're doing. That's great. But in the world we live in today, they may not. And it's changed a lot since I first became a manager. We have so much more information, social media, all of these things at work that are coming at you from all these different directions. And it's harder to be a manager who can keep up with all of those things today. It's just not reality. So, what I tell people to do is create, and I'm going to mean this in a metaphorical way, not create a movie reel, but talk about your things that you're doing like a movie reel that you're putting in front of your manager on a regular basis. That could be a status report. That could be you sending a quick note in Teams or however you communicate in Slack or whatever it is. Sending something that they can continue to see what you're doing and know about you, know about what you're doing or your team is doing. That is, it helps them. I think people are worried about doing that. Like, oh my God, they don't want to hear from me. They're busy. They don't want to talk to me. But if you want them to know what you're doing, you have to be the one to talk about it. And it doesn't have to be a conversation even. It can be different ways. So that's why I laid out so many options in the book, because I couldn't figure out where to cut it off. I didn't want to not include something that might be helpful to someone, but it's important that you do as much as you can to get in front of people. And sometimes that just means those little actions that you're taking.
Yeah, I really appreciate what you shared about, in the earlier stages of your career, working hard and making yourself known, that's applicable. But when you start to really level up in your role, how that communication piece and learning how to share and being able to use your voice in a way that is authentic. And I believe in your book, you referred to it as authentic leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and coming from that place of sharing of value. And I think that's really important to point out, because it really helps shift the maybe old stories, old ways of thinking when you're, you know, self promoting, or in the past when you felt like you were bragging because you were tooting your own horn.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate you sharing that as well. I know I struggled with that for a really long time in my early corporate days, but also in my first business, as far as learning how to um, learning that it was okay to be seen, um, for me, and learning that it was okay to use my voice, and how to do that effectively. And because I had a lot of old stories. I had a lot of old stories, running around in this head,
Yeah.
and that were keeping me from that visibility piece. And I think it's really important that no matter where a person's at, if they're struggling in this way, that they're able to move through it in an effective way with the right support. So
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate the work that you're doing in the world. Um, Let me ask you, with well, we've been talking about in the workplace. Can you speak to a little bit, if someone is watching and they're struggling with visibility in the online space? Can you speak to that?
Mm. Yes, that was definitely a challenge for me too. So when I started my business, I had somewhat figured it out from a corporate standpoint, like what to do. But then I thought, oh no, I don't have, my company's name next to me anymore. It's just me. And I had to realize that I had to make this identity shift. And how could I do that? So when I first started, a brilliant person told me to write a blog. And I had never written a blog in my life, didn't know how to do it. And so I wrote it, and it took me a week to feel like, okay, you can hit the button to post it. And probably no one looked at it, but in my mind, like, oh my gosh, everyone's judging it. It's not good enough. So I went through all of that stuff. So I had to get comfortable with that. Part of the reason I wanted to do the blog was to start to create the brand that I'm no longer a IT director at this company. Now I'm a thought leader around leadership and coaching. And, I was just, the visibility idea for the book was, still in the back of my head, but it wasn't even something I had started yet. And I realized that the more vulnerable I was online, the more people connected with me. So I had former people that I worked with said, I love that story that you shared because that's me. And so I think there's something about the vulnerability side of posting your own stories, your own experiences, and saying that you don't have it figured out, because there's so many people that don't have it figured out and they think they're alone. They think they're the only one who has the problem. And the more we can, try to release that for people and help them see that they're not alone, that everybody struggles with this in one way or another, can just help them. So that was one piece that I started, being doing something like this, 3, 4 years ago, probably would have not been something I would have considered. Doing a podcast would not be something that I would have been ready for. So I needed some time, I think, for myself to get comfortable with doing it. So the first time I did it, I went live in my own little Facebook group with no one in there. And it just helped me like learn how to do it, learn where I was looking, learn how to talk. So I got way more comfortable with it after doing that. But I think it just helps people connect with you. And so video is obviously what social media is looking for. And the more comfortable you can get with it, even if you do stuff like what I did behind the scenes to get ready for it, just know that you don't have to be perfect in video either. There's many times where I may say something wrong or flub something up. And you know what? It's just, that's who I am. I want to be authentic. And so I don't want it to be completely perfect. I want it to be a good experience for people and to learn or to hear what I'm saying, but it's definitely not perfect. I can promise you that.
That's great. And I think it's important for people to know that. I, to myself, can so relate, because 3 or 4 years ago, I would have never done anything like this, much less guest on a podcast, much less go live. I mean, any of that. I even
Mhm.
hesitated posting
Mhm.
just something that I had written. And, I think it's important for people out there to know that, there are, like for me, for example, my visibility issue as far as, you know, feeling like it was safe to put myself out there, feeling like, you know, or really even finding my voice.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a lot of e- emotional trauma around those two pieces. And being introverted, being an empath, it really affected my ability to show up. And it wasn't until I healed through those things was I able to actually take that next step. And I think it's important for um, people to realize that it is a dynamic thing, and to understand that they're not alone is really important. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much for sharing today, and all of your wisdom and expertise around visibility. If someone wanted to reach out to you, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, LinkedIn is an easy way to do that. You can go to LinkedIn. I'm open to connecting with people. I love to meet new people. I'm doing it every week. So if you have an interest in hearing more about visibility, you can go to my website. I have a page on the book that has the videos, and there's a summary of the book if you're interested in seeing a little bit more about that. And there's also a page on the podcast, so you can see the podcast, but they're everywhere. On any place that you listen to podcasts, you can find it. But I'm really enjoying just having these different ways to get out in the world and start to help people see that they can be visible. So the more I can do that, the happier it makes me. And I think it just helps people realize that they're not alone.
Nice. I love that you're living your calling, and you're helping lift other people up.
Thanks.
So I will put your link in the comments where this video is posted. Also, there will be a link if someone's interested in booking a conversation with you. I would encourage everyone to get a copy of the Visibility Factor and also listen to her podcast. So thanks for tuning in today to the Destined for More online show. We will see you in the next episode. And for now, cheers. We're happy to bring you all this wonderful value, and we hope that it helps you take the next step. So thank you so much. Take care.